Hello and welcome to our second Indie Obscura Digital Direct, or IOX-2 for short. My name is Nars and I hope you're as excited as I am to check out some amazing indie games today. At Indie Obscura, we want to start by thanking you for tuning in, whether you're here during the live show or watching it later after the show's ended. We appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us. There's been a lot put into this, so it means so much that you're here. Back in April, we aired our first IOX event featuring 21 must-play indie games. With IOX-2, we have 16 new games for you to check out. The number of indies in IOX-2 may sound small in comparison to our first show, but trust us when we say we packed a lot of content into today's presentation, so you will not be disappointed. Not only do we have trailers and gameplay footage to show you, we've decided to expand our focus on developer interviews for IOX-2. We feel like indie devs are just as important as the games themselves, and we want their voices to be heard as well, because without them, these amazing games wouldn't be here, so we're grateful for that. During our showcase, you'll explore magical worlds, sail across calm seas, encounter giant machines, and view the world from unique perspectives, and more. If you're eager to see all of the games and surprises we have in store, you'll be happy to hear the wait is finally over. IOX-2 starts right now. First up in our IOX broadcast is an adorable physics-based multiplayer game that lets you play as a floppy cat and battle with your friends in a cute, cozy arena. Not only do these cat competitors have cute names like Jellybean and Sausage, they're also able to wear hats and throw tables at one another. Paws up, claws out, here comes Fisti-Fluffs. Want to get in on all the cat versus cat action? You can download a free demo of Fisti-Fluffs on itch.io right now. With the game still in development, make sure you follow @PlayFellowGames for updates. To learn more about Fisti-Fluffs, head over to the game's official website. Do you love plants? What about magic? Have you ever dreamed of caring for an adorable family of mandrakes who depend on you for their every need, from water to protection against fearsome forest creatures? If you answered yes to any of these questions, we have the perfect game for you. It's called Drake Hollow. To learn more about the vibrant world, we're turning it over to the creative director at the Molasses Flood, Forrest Dowling.
Hi, my name's Forrest Dowling, and I'm the creative director on Drake Hollow, and I'm here to answer a few questions.
Why did you decide to do a game like Drake Hollow after your previous game, The Flame in the Flood?
So when we started working on Drake Hollow, it's actually kind of a funny story. It started out as The Flame in the Flood, kind of 1.5. We were like, well, maybe we could just sort of revisit the thing that we've done, and fix up all the things about it that maybe we wanted to do differently or a little better. And in the process of discovery, kind of everything changed about it. Like, it went from a survival game to not a survival game. Fundamentally, it was a game about traveling a river. It's no longer about that at all. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I think one of the biggest ones is that I just wanted to try something that was really different in terms of the experience that the player has. I always view a survival game as being sort of a relentless experience. You're always struggling. It's like you have 4 different damage over times on you at all times. And I wanted to try doing something that didn't feel like that at all and was much more forgiving. And that's sort of where the idea of building for something else came about. And that's really the core of Drake Hollow and why we're making this game.
What sort of gameplay can players expect from Drake Hollow?
Players can expect 3 core types of gameplay when it comes to Drake Hollow. One is exploration, another is combat, and the third is strategic building. So exploration is pretty self-explanatory. There's a dynamically generated world that you're playing in. It's full of supplies and notes and story bits and things to discover, and you need to roam all over that world and loot it for supplies in order to build up your camp. Combat is also pretty self-explanatory. This world is filled with various monsters that wish to do you and the drakes you're caring for harm. So as you explore, you'll need to battle them, and also periodically they're going to raid your camp, so you'll need to defend the drakes. And then thirdly, there's strategic building. So the drakes themselves are essentially little sims. They need food and water and entertainment and a place to sleep. And the older they get and the more of them they need, of course, the more of these things you're going to need to produce. So your job as a player is to gather the supplies you need to build out your camp, to provide the needs for the drakes that you continue to age up and discover as your camp grows. So really, those are the core 3 components of the game.
Why did you choose mandrakes over other plant options?
So we chose to use mandrakes as the basis for drakes because we were looking a lot into kind of witchcraft and herbalism, and that has a lot to do with the story of the game that you'll uncover as you play. But what was really interesting about mandrakes is that they actually have this mythic history of being a living sentient creature. Like, they tend to look like little weird baby bodies. We also wanted to make sure that they were clearly not humanoid or human creatures at all, and that's why we ended up looking at plants in the first place, because we wanted it to really feel like that they had personality, but that they weren't a pet exactly. The whole premise of the game is that they need your help, and they can't really care for themselves.
Are there different drake types in the game?
In terms of drake variety, there's quite a lot of, we'll call them drake varietals. There's 27 altogether, and each one represents a different affinity or buff. And the way they're broken down is based on their affinity to a crystal and then the power that they give you. So you'll find a drake and it might have, for example, like a fire affinity or like a lifesteal, like a vampiric drake. And what that means is you can interact with it, receive that buff, and that affects your gameplay. That drives the core of the game, which is you find a drake of a type, or maybe multiple drakes that use the same type of stone. You find the stones, the crystals, to age them up. You decide which ones you value the most and age those up, and then in so doing, grow your camp, allow you to discover more drakes, build more things, and just keep that sort of cycle going.
What sort of customization options are available in Drake Hollow?
So in terms of customization, we have quite a lot of character customization. We've got a pretty good library of default options to choose from, just in terms of how your character is going to look. And then lots and lots of cosmetic items you can find in the world for your character. And you can find those in any game and carry them through to any other. And that includes visiting a friend to play co-op. Any cosmetics you find, you'll be able to take back into your own game. In terms of your village, you're not really unlocking cosmetics, you're just unlocking new structures over time, and the more your village grows, the more you're going to have to build, and the more options you're going to be able to choose from. As far as drakes go, they have their own look. You age them up over time, and that changes their appearance, but their look is really tied to their affinity and what they do, so you can't change that.
What are some other weapon types players can use in the game?
So in terms of weapon variety, we really wanted to have some fun with it and kind of create some goofy weapons. And the idea is like you're in this sort of magical place and kind of everything does what you want it to. Well, some of my personal favorites, I really like the 8-ball stick shift, just because it's such a cool thing. Like it's from a classic hot rod. It's just, I don't know if anybody even knows what that looks like these days. The other would be like the electric guitar, which if you've got a Drake with the electric affinity and have assign that to yourself as a buff, you're swinging around a guitar and it's making guitar sounds and it's blasting everything with electricity and it just looks and feels cool. I also really like our array of ranged weapons. The blunderbuss is probably my favorite just because it's only really useful very close range, but it packs a punch, so it's really nice to use in a pinch.
When does Drake Hollow release, and what platforms will it be available on?
Drake Hollow comes out July 17th, and it's coming to PC on Steam and Windows 10 Store and Xbox One, and it will be available on Game Pass on both PC and Xbox. Thanks so much for the questions, I really appreciate it.
Drake Hollow is scheduled to release on July 17th for Xbox One and Steam. For updates, be sure to follow at Molasses Flood on Twitter and wishlist the game on Steam. Up next, we have a beautifully illustrated game about a brother and sister on a quest to find their way home. As they wander through enchanting areas, they encounter one-of-a-kind creatures from goblins to helpful little frogs. If you love fairy tales, you're going to love Lost in Play.
Maui. What's your facility key? Oye, ololola.
Lost in Play is projected to release in mid-2021. As we patiently wait for its release, we recommend keeping an eye on @HappyJuiceGames on Twitter. Also remember to wishlist the game on Steam so you can purchase a copy the moment it comes out in 2021. Longing for adventure out on the open seas? Sail Forth is a procedurally generated sailing game that features breathtaking scenery, cute characters, and fearsome pirates. To help explain the game a little better than we can, here's Sail Forth's solo developer, David Evans.
What was the process like of creating the visuals for Sail Forth?
Sail Forth is a chill roguelike about sailing and battling pirates. The water essentially drove the aesthetic of the whole game, and developing its look was a very iterative process. After staring at it for long periods of time while working on the game, I'd get annoyed by a particular detail and then spend hours tweaking it. I definitely had to make compromises when it came to the overall amount and detail of art in the game. As one person, I simply can't make as much content as a larger team can. And while I've learned a lot during this project, my skills as an artist is still fairly limited. Keeping the visual style simple and designing a game where the more expensive art pieces are separated by large expanses of water helped to keep the art demands reasonable.
Sailforth's environments are procedurally generated. Are there unique weather conditions or creatures to discover in these environments?
The game uses a combination of procedural generation and handcrafted elements. Each biome has a palette of creatures, colors, environment pieces, etc., and it puts those together procedurally to make the levels. There's always at least one unique creature in every biome to spot and grab a photo of, which is a fun little side activity you can do while you're sailing to your next destination. Snowstorms and penguins are included, and a bunch more.
Can you tell us a little more about the physics behind the way the ships sail?
In the initial months of the project, I came across a paper that described a pretty simple way of approximating the forces on a sail for a given wind direction. I took that as a starting point, and then throughout the next 3 years, I endlessly tweaked it to get a nice balance between playable but believable physics. I like to refer to it as stylized realism. My primary goal in starting this project was to make a sailing game with a little more complexity than other games out there, without becoming a hardcore simulator. The boats sail loosely according to the real principles of sailing, but not to the point where you have to spend a tedious amount of time maneuvering. The game is going to ship with at least 12 playable boats, from small to large. Players can design the emblems shown on the flag and sails, which will also affect the fashion of their crew. As players progress, they can accumulate up to 5 boats in their fleet, which they can further customize with weapons and upgrades.
Are there other activities in Sailforth outside of combat and exploration, like racing or fishing?
Having alternatives to combat was another thing that I knew I wanted in the game from the very start. I try to scatter lots of alternate activities throughout the world, such as racing and fishing. Some of the characters you meet will challenge you to races or have other small requests for help, and there are hidden items to find in some of the areas. The game will also include a free play mode, which allows for uninterrupted sailing without any danger or enemies, which I find to be a great way to relax.
Are there things you'd like to add to Sailforth in the future?
I'm really interested in exploring alternate game modes and playstyles. I think I made a great toy, which is the sailboat, and I don't think that this is the only game that can be played with it. There could be really fun multiplayer opportunities, or even something more strategy focused. I'm trying not to think about it too much, or I'm going to become impatient with this initial release.
Finally, when is Sailforth expected to release, and what platforms will it be available on?
There's no hard release date yet, but it's looking super likely that it's going to be out before the end of this year. The game will be a simultaneous launch on Steam for PC, Mac, and Linux, and then also on Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One.
If you're eager to set sail, you'll be happy to hear that Sailforth is expected to release sometime later this year. For the exact release date, follow @SailforthGame on Twitter and wishlist Sailforth on Steam. From one mode of transportation to another, our next game is one that will appeal to hardcore racing fans and aspiring rally racers alike. Get ready to rev up your engines and race to the finish in Art of Rally.
Turbocharged, four-wheel drive. Nicola, twice the winner of this event. And John, this is the car of the future.
Oh, undoubtedly. Of a new era in rallying. The age of the supercar has arrived. Four-wheel drive and turbocharging are the keys to success, and all future serious contenders must heed the warning.
Art of Rally is another game you can look forward to in 2020. To make sure you grab this game the moment it comes out, be sure to follow @FunSelector on Twitter, and of course, wishlist Art of Rally on Steam. Have you ever wanted to team up with or against your friends in a deadly, action-packed underwater setting? Beneath the waters of Swimsanity lurk giant foes, 8 exciting game modes, over 150 challenges, unique power-ups, and more. Interested? We thought so. Here's Swimsanity's developer and Decoy Games co-founder Ahmed Abdullah on what we're sure will be one of 2020's best multiplayer titles.
What's going on, guys? My name is Ahmed Abdullah, co-founder and developer of Decoy Games, and I'm excited to tell you guys about Swimsanity. So for those of you who don't know, Swimsanity is an underwater shooter competitive cooperative game modes where you and friends can go online or locally and play in all these great ways where you can do underwater battles. You know, the great thing about Swimsanity is that you select as Muba, our hero, and then you'll be able to unleash Swimsanity in all these cool action-packed game modes.
How many people are working on Swimsanity? How long has the game been in development?
So Decoy Games, we're a 3-man development team. So other co-founders, my brother, Khalil, and we have our artist, Chris Venn. So Swimsanity is our first game we ever created, so we're really excited. We kind of used it to actually learn game development. So we're self-taught, self-published, and self-funded indie studio, so we're as indie as it gets. But we've always had big aspirations to produce on consoles and build this game. So really, Swimsanity started off as a Flash project that was just this game called Swimsanity. Muba Diver, the scuba diver, he just picked up gold from the bottom of the sea. And now that we wanted to take that small set of what we were learning how to game develop, and now we wanted to bring it into consoles. So we had to add multiplayer, we had to add online play, and all this great stuff you guys can enjoy.
Does Swimsanity have a learning curve, or can anyone jump in and play?
So Swimsanity is for everybody, right? So you can jump in right away. We always say it takes just 3 minutes to get used to the game, and then after that you'll find yourself competing, setting records in co-op mode or taking out your friends in versus mode. So we like to make a game that's really for all ages and for everyone to compete and work together.
Why did you pick an underwater setting for Swimsanity?
Everyone says underwater levels are the hardest in games, right? Probably the worst one. So why don't you just make a full game on it? We're trying to get rid of that whole myth of underwater, but we make sure there's always this arcade feel when you're underwater. So even though there's this of physics movement, you always feel like you always have this advantage of moving around and competing with others.
What are some of the enemies that players will encounter in Swimsanity?
In Swimsanity, there's a lot of sea creatures that we bring to you from under the sea. So great thing is that you'll fight these big sea creature monsters in our co-op adventure mode. From big whales to turtles to even a lobster that comes at you with these big cannons on its arm, to the regular sea creatures that you fight, from a jellyfish, a seahorse with dynamite strapped on a bat that clucks like a chicken. Yeah, it's pretty weird, but that's what we do. That's what we love Swimsanity. It's all insane, and it's all underwater fun.
How many different game modes does Swimsanity have?
Swimsanity, we have 8 game modes, 5 competitive and 3 cooperative. So the 3 cooperative game modes, you have Adventure and Adventure Sanity, allows you to have this side-scrolling experience, or you can jump in our Horde mode Survival and try to get the highest ranking you can. Or you can compete with your friends, that gives you your standard deathmatch, team deathmatch, you have your last move of standing, and we also have our great capture flag mode called Orb Rush. So there's a lot of content day one when you get into Swimsanity, all the modes you can play.
Can you tell us a little more about what unleashes are in Swimsanity? Do you have any favorites?
So the cool thing about Swimsanity is when you select your Muba, you also select your Unleash. So when you deal damage on your opponents, your Unleash bar will fill up, then you get to Unleash Swimsanity. So these are one of the special moves you can select that goes from healing your teammates with the medic and turn into a big shark where you can just devour all your opponents. That's probably one of my favorites, and it's probably one of the fan favorites as well, but there's some we haven't even shown you guys yet. I'm really excited you to see it.
The soundtrack is absolutely phenomenal. Who composed the game's OST, and what was the process like?
Yeah, so the amazing thing about Swimsanity, we love the visuals, but really that soundtrack really brings it together. Joshua Mosley, he actually worked on games like Missplosion Man, one of our favorites, and also some soundtracks for movies like Batman vs. Superman and the HBO boxing theme song. So we had to bring him in, bring that epic sound to the game.
Are there any plans for post-launch updates and DLC for Swimsanity?
Yeah, the thing about a game too, we had to scale back a lot of the content that was there. So we have plenty of ideas for DLC that's going to be there. So you can expect new game modes, you can expect more unleashes, more levels, and you can expect things that will really even change the way you play the game now. So really excited to bring you guys content even after it comes out.
Finally, when is Swimsanity expected to release, and on what platforms?
So for everyone that's been waiting for the game for so long, you don't have to wait much longer. Swimsanity will come out this summer, 2020. It'll be on PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and Steam. And it doesn't matter what platform you have, because we will also have online crossplay, so you can play with anyone, any of your friends, on any platform.
Swimsanity is expected to release in summer 2020. On Steam, you can wishlist Swimsanity and you can stay up to date on all of the launch details by following @Decoy Games on Twitter. Are you a fan of zombie games? We have one that truly stands apart from the rest. In this somber indie, you play as a mother who has been bitten by a zombie. With time running out, you'll need to work hard to protect your son, teach him important life skills, and ensure he'll be safe when you're no longer around. Get ready, because we have an exclusive new trailer that'll show you more of what you can look forward to in Undying. Thank you to Vanimals for that phenomenal trailer. We're really looking forward to playing Undying when it comes out in 2021. For updates, follow at Play Undying on Twitter and take a moment to wishlist Undying on Steam as well. For people with dementia, the world can feel confusing. Important memories evade your grasp, and it can be hard to move forward. The trailer for Before I Forget immediately captivated our attention, as it follows a woman with dementia as she explores her house and interacts with the objects that surround her. For a closer look at this poignant indie game, we spoke with Shella Ramanan from Threefold Games.
Hello, my name is Shella Ramanan and I'm the co-founder and narrative designer at Threefold Games, and our debut game is Before I Forget.
What sort of gameplay can players expect in Before I Forget?
So Before I Forget is a narrative exploration game. It's first person and you explore a house as a woman you discover is called Sunita. The main gameplay is you walk around and you interact with objects. And because Sunita has dementia, she doesn't immediately remember where she is. She doesn't remember sort of key things about her past and her life. When you first enter the house, it is in grayscale. And when you interact with something, it triggers a memory for Sunita. And this brings colour back into that part of the world. And she also narrates her thoughts about that item, or sometimes the item will trigger a more immersive memory, sort of a flashback.
How many people are working on Before I Forget, and how did you approach the game's development?
The Before I Forget team consists of myself and Claire Morwood. And Claire is the programmer and 3D artist on the game. So all the beautiful graphics are down to Claire, and all the hard work and wizardry behind the game are down to Claire. She wears many hats. The house, so we made a very conscious decision to create a light, airy feel to the house. You know, the promise that we're setting up to players when they start the game is this isn't a horror game, it's daytime, it's summer, the birds are singing outside, but the threat is the dementia that Sunita is suffering from, as opposed to the house hiding horrors and skeletons in cupboards, well, only metaphorical ones.
Without giving too much away, can you tell us a little more about the main character, Sunita?
She is Indian by birth and came to the UK in the 60s to study cosmology. We had a wonderful voice actor called Anjali Kupaneni.
Is this the right place? Dylan will know. I'll find him.
Yeah, she did a fantastic job of playing Sunita as a child, and then as a young woman, and also as an older woman suffering dementia. And so she was really versatile and managed to get those different nuances in beautifully. And yeah, she was lovely to work with.
The soundtrack is also beautiful. Who composed the soundtrack, and how does the music play into the game itself as you explore?
So the game is fairly quiet apart from ambient noises in the beginning of the game, and then there's a moment where a piece of music plays and it represents the character of Dylan, which is who you're looking for in the game. That moment, the music, which was done by Dave Tucker, really touched people because it's this really sort of represents Dylan and what he means to Sunita. And yeah, so Dave worked with us from really early on and gave us that beautiful piece.
Why do you think it's important to create games like Before I Forget that tackle subjects underrepresented in games, like dementia?
Sadly, it affects too many people, and we discovered that when we took it to events, it was quite emotional at times because people had really visceral emotional responses because it would remind them of someone they'd lost or someone who had just been diagnosed. But we got really good feedback from them. Lots of people said, I might not be able to play it, but thank you for making it, which was incredibly humbling and overwhelming. From very early on, we wanted to make a game that was respectful as opposed to exploiting the symptoms of dementia, and I hope we've managed to do that. And we worked with medical professionals, Donald Servant and Dr. David Codling. They worked with us, played builds throughout development, and sort of steered us, and our discussions with them gave us ideas for different elements in the game. I think the thing that we want people to take away from Before I Forget is that it's a story about a person who lived a life and, you know, had friends and a career and loved people and people loved her back, as opposed to someone who is just a disease and some symptoms.
When is Before I Forget expected to release, and on what platforms?
We hope you enjoy Before I Forget, which comes out on the 16th of July 2020, and we're incredibly excited. It will be available on Steam and itch for PC, Mac, and Linux. Enjoy!
Before I Forget is scheduled to release on July 16th. On Steam, you can wishlist Before I Forget, and you can follow Threefold Games on both Twitter at Threefold Games and itch.io. Hello again! If you joined us at the start of the show and are still watching, thank you! We really appreciate it. If you're just now tuning in, welcome to IOX-2 broadcast. We've seen 8 amazing indie games so far and have 8 more to show you. But before we reveal the next batch of games, we want to take a moment to thank the people who helped make IOX-2 a reality. Firstly, we want to thank Shacknews for believing in IOX-2, sponsoring the show and airing it on their Twitch channel. You guys rock! We want to thank HyperX for believing in the project and generously agreeing to come on board as a sponsor. Love you, HyperX! Finally, we want to thank the team at Greenlit Content for giving us the support and resources necessary to produce IOX-2. It takes a lot to do this, and the guys that are behind this did a lot of work. Much props to you guys. And of course, we want to thank everyone viewing the show for giving us and the 16 participating indies their time and attention. Now, let's keep it going with our next indie game. In Titan Chaser, you set off each night in search of mysterious giants and work to drive them away from town using the power of light rather than combat. If you don't spot any, you're free to drive around in the fog, listening to music and soaking in the scenery. Ready to track down some titans? Get behind the wheel and get your light ready. We're driving through the surreal experience of Titan Chaser. Eager to see more and experience Titan Chaser for yourself? We have good news because the game is available in early access right now on Steam. You can also follow Sta's Showstack on Twitter for updates. Hungry for another game featuring a surreal world? What about one that features giant ancient machines for you to fight? You can have all of this and more in Out of Place, a game about a boy named Simon who gets lost in a mysterious world. To learn more about the world Simon will explore, we have an interview to share with you featuring Marcus and Thomas of Bagpack Games.
Hi, I'm Marcus. I'm doing level design and lighting art for Out of Place, and I'm also the CEO of Bagpack Games. We're a small indie studio of only 5 people, and we're developing Out of Place at the moment as our first project.
For those unfamiliar with the game, what is Out of Place about?
Out of Place is about Simon and his machine-like companion, the Orb. They need to find a way back home together and overcome various challenges on their journey in this far and mysterious world. For example, there are those machines roaming around everywhere and trying to stop them. But also the environment is not very friendly and it is very dangerous sometimes, so they both need to overcome their fears to ultimately find a way back home together in the end.
What was the main inspiration behind the creation of Out of Place?
Our main inspiration for creating Out of Place is old Spielberg movies like E.T. or The Never-Ending Story, for example. They throw teenage protagonists into a far and distant world which is unknown to them, where they need to prove themselves on an adventurous journey. This is what we also want to do with Out of Place. We want to have a short but unique adventurous experience where Simon will need to prove himself together with his companion, the Orb.
The game follows Simon, a teenager who gets lost in a destroyed world. What else should we know about Simon as the game's main character?
Simon is originally from Northern Europe, of our world. And the setting is sometime in the near future. We wanted to have something that is not that far away so people can relate to it, the technology and to the all-day life we're showing in the beginning of the game. And Simon is also very curious and adventurous and likes to tinker with the machinery of the time a lot. But he also has strong bonds to his family, which makes it really hard for him to being away from them. And which is why he wants to go back home, of course.
Accompanying Simon is a companion called the Orb. How does the Orb help Simon, and what is the Orb like as an AI character?
So the Orb provides the abilities in Out of Place. He's this immersive UI where you can choose your abilities you want to unleash, and they will help you to fight in combat or to overcome different obstacles in the environment. On the other hand, we don't want the Orb to only be like this tool that you use all the time, but he will also be a unique character. He will be like a pet flying around, showing you stuff in the environment, making Simon aware of stuff that's going on, and he will also play a very big part in the main storyline.
Visually, the game looks stunning. Who's working on the visual designs, and why did they go with that specific style?
Hi, my name is Thomas from Bagpack Games, and on Out of Place I'm responsible for the art of the game. Specifically 3D art and animation. While creating the art style of the game, we were looking at artworks from Simon Stalenhag and Yuri Shvedov, who create these really alienate and yet familiar artworks, which are really moody and atmospheric. And with Out of Place we try to capture the same essence like these artists do.
What sort of combat can gamers expect from Out of Place?
Out of Place combat system will have a tactical feel to it, with engaging, interesting enemy interactions. The player needs to use powerful abilities, while also managing resources, his energy, to use those abilities. Each enemy will need to be approached differently, and there are also epic boss fights, where the player's skills really get challenged.
The game's trailer shows some interesting machine designs. What should gamers know about these machines before playing Out of Place?
In the world of Out of Place, the player can find various enemies, various critter drones, those machines that once helped to create this world. They all once had a purpose, but now they are all broken and are thirsting for the energy that the orb contains. So they try to chase the orb and try to chase Simon, hurt him, and really are the danger in this world now.
Finally, when is Out of Place expected to release, and on what platforms?
So I have to say that everything you see in the trailer and in the gameplay videos is taken from our first demo, which we created during our master studies, but it's not from the final game. We just started developing the final game as Bagpack Games. We are just 5 people, so I can't really narrow down a release date yet. But in terms of platforms, we are developing for PC first, using the Unreal Engine. We want to bring Out of Place to all the other major consoles as well. So if you want to stay up to date, just follow us on our social media, join our Discord if you're interested. You can also ask us questions there. We're also always happy to answer questions. And thank you for having us. And yeah, enjoy the other projects in the showcase. Goodbye.
Thank you, Marcus and Thomas, for answering all of our questions and getting us even more excited to play Out of Place once it's released. For more information, head over to outof.place, the game's official website. You can also follow @OutOfPlaceGame on Twitter. Adding to our list of games with frightening machines, we have Project Sky from solo developer Seth DeGrace. The game lets you explore Skyland, a vast open world full of interesting technology and unique tribes. The game also includes fun features like being able to pal around with creatures like hawk wolves. To tell us more about Project Sky, here's Seth DeGrace.
What was the main inspiration behind Project Sky's creation, and when did you first begin working on the project?
So I've always been fascinated by indigenous peoples and their history, so it's no real surprise why James Cameron's Avatar and its whole overarching theme of primitive faction fights off a technologically advanced force had such a big impact on me, but it was definitely one of the bigger inspirations. After watching that, I went through many iterations on what would end up becoming Project Sky's world, and it wasn't until just a couple of years back, during a trip to Costa Rica, that I'd had an idea that I really fell in love with. Just the vastness and the beauty that I saw there gave me an idea that would end up becoming the game that you see today. And that idea was, if you had an intelligent AI companion that knew a region better than you, wouldn't it be cool if you could ask them to take you someplace interesting? The actual programming and gameplay work on the game only started about the summer of that year, back in 2018, but it's been a decade since I started imagining the Skylands. It's a vast world of floating continents where you can walk to the edge of the world, look down, and be greeted by an ocean of stars.
For those unfamiliar with the game, can you give us a quick description of what Project Sky is all about?
Project Sky is an action exploration RPG that's set in a vast world of old technology and untamed wilderness. It's a world that was once ruled by false gods that possessed the secret to creating life from metal, that they abandoned many generations ago. You play as a refugee of the New World Order, narrowly escaping being recaptured after having been rescued by a member of one of the 7 tribes. You and this companion become a pair of unlikely travel partners, and you're both tasked with attempting to seek help in the face of annihilation, which is to say, uniting all 7 tribes under a single banner so that you might stand a fighting chance against the ever-approaching New World Order.
How large is the world players will be able to explore in Project Sky?
At the moment, Project Sky has 20 planned territories without counting any of these subterranean or underground ones, and currently I've shown off a fraction of a single one of those regions. The world has to be large enough to support some of the massive creatures that are found on the continent, but also to balance out a lot of the fun ways to travel that I'll be talking about later.
Can you tell us more about the different non-human races in Project Sky?
Well, there are 7 currently planned races. 6 of them are animals: wolves, otters, bears, jaguars, foxes, and maned wolves, while the 7th is an entirely original race that I am designing myself. Each of them will have their own culture, traditions, histories that you guys will be able to latch onto and, hopefully fall in love with. I would say that there is one race that is particularly special to me because they were the first one that I created. So 9 years ago, I created a character named Kai. She belongs to a race of lupine machine hunters that would later be called the Rakuti, and I happen to really like their traditions in particular. So every Rakuti tribesperson has unique markings that they paint on their fur. Each one means something, depending on the color of the paint. So black and white paint is an event or an accomplishment, while red paint symbolizes permanence, so a commitment or a choice. So to those who can read them, the paintings on a Rakuti's fur can tell quite literally the entire story of their life.
Do all players have the option to travel with a direwolf? What are some of the other ways players can get around in Project Sky?
Yes, all players will absolutely have the option to travel with a hawkwolf of their own. So every tribe has their own means of traveling around their territory, and usually this comes in the form of some sort of mount that you'll be able to unlock, like the hawkwolves, or an actual giant hawk, or maybe a crazy fast lion-hyena hybrid. The act of taming your own hawkwolf is actually a rite of passage for Rakuti tribes people, so if you want your own as soon as possible, make it a point to befriend the painted wolves first. Although not all vehicles can be earned by befriending a tribe, some of them, like the Lionheart hoverbike, will have to be acquired through other means and potentially repaired as well. And since you won't always have a mount or vehicle readily available to you, I will also be providing a bunch of cool tools that you can use to get around the place, like a grappling hook to swing from mountain to mountain. If you're trying to scale a tall mountain quickly, use the rope slinger, make a zip line that goes from where you're standing up to the very top of the mountain and ride it all the way up.
What sort of combat does Project Sky have, and what are some of the weapons players can use to defend themselves?
So I'm aiming for Project Sky to have a healthy balance of encounters that reward thoughtful preparation and creativity through the usage of traps and the environment, but also enough of them that force desperation-driven decisions. There's never going to be an encounter in the game in which there's only a single way to succeed. It's also worth noting that there is a full limb-based damage system at play, so if you're hunting a machine for components, make sure you don't completely destroy the specific parts that you want. This system applies to more than just enemies, though. Sure, you might manage to barely win a fight, but if you or your companion took a really bad hit and now have a crippled leg, things might get a little bit complicated moving forward. Players have the option to rock whatever loadout they want, really. I want to encourage creativity in this area. For ranged weapons, you'll have bows, crossbows, and firearms if you know where to find them, though they are the hardest weapon type to maintain. There's also a variety of melee weapons to try. You can use a sword, you can use a spear, or you can make a weapon that can transform between both a sword and a spear for that extra bit of versatility. Of course, you can also bludgeon enemies with a mace, or cut them down with a greatsword if that's what you fancy.
Continuing that thought, can you tell us more about some of the massive foes players will take on in Project Sky?
Some of the coolest encounters in Project Sky are going to be the ones where you're tasked with taking down a truly colossal enemy. So far, the only one I've shown off at that scale is the Machinist Warstrider Sage, also known as the broodmother for her swarm of combat drones. Sage stands for Synaptic Automaton Generation Expedient, which is an unnecessarily complicated way of saying that she is a walking drone factory, which means that she'll be replacing her losses just seconds after they fall. I've got a lot of planned enemies, and Sage is surprisingly far from the largest of them. There's many Warstriders, and it's also important to note that Warstrider is just a blanket term. They're not all going to be large spider bots. I've actually already teased a couple of them in the demo I released just a bit ago with the Warstrider Registry, which was a terminal that mentioned a whole bunch of other Warstriders like Aqua, Gaia, and Sky. All I'll say for now is that all of the machines that the false gods constructed were made with a purpose in mind, so they're all doing something. Not all of them will be hostile. They have their own jobs and tasks that they were meant to do. But also, these false gods didn't pull the majority of their designs from nowhere, and a lot of them were inspired from actual fauna that you'll encounter in the Skylands.
When is Project Sky expected to release, and on what platforms?
So, about when Project Sky is expected to release. That is an excellent question. It's hard to give an estimate at this time, because up until now, and likely for the foreseeable future, I am the sole developer of Project Sky. Once that changes, if that changes, or once I've finished the core systems required to build the rest of the game, I'll be able to better estimate when I'll realistically be able to release it. Although, to start, it'll be put on Steam in early access. I think that with a game of this scale, player feedback is going to be crucial to making sure that the game as a whole is a good experience. Closer to release, though, I'll be looking to get it released on as many different storefronts as possible, and then porting it to relevant consoles at that time. I have no plans for exclusivity of any sort at this time. I really do love this game, and I just want people to play it.
Thank you, Seth, for taking the time to share your incredible game. We are really looking forward to battling out with machines in Project Sky when it's released. The game is still in development, so if you want to keep track of its progress, head over to its official website, projectskygame.com, and follow the game on Twitter at projectsky_game. Games based on folklore and mythology are fascinating, blending together popular tales in order to offer something new. In Black Book, you play as a young sorceress on a quest to find a demonic artifact. Along the way, she'll encounter a variety of creatures in a world based around Slavic mythology. To tell us more about the mythology, settings, creatures, and characters in Black Book, we have Vladimir Beletsky, Black Book's lead game designer and writer.
Hello, my name is Vladimir Beletsky. I'm from Martyoshka, the studio behind Black Book.
What inspired you to make a game like Black Book?
We started making Black Book after we finished working on our first game called The Mooseman. we decided to make another mythological game. This time we took a more ambitious goal to make a game about Russian folklore, Russian mythology. We knew from our childhood the folklore short stories called Belichki in the native tongue. These are short stories about mythological creatures, about demons and spirits, about people that meet with these otherworldly beings, and they are told as if these events were happening in real life. That inspired us first of all, and we settled on a deck-building RPG similar to Slay the Spire, mixed with adventure games like Quest for Glory and travel mechanics like Faster Than Light, for example. All of this inspired us to create a Black Book.
How many people are working on Black Book right now? Have there been any challenges in making the game as an indie team?
Today there are 5 people in the development team working on Black Book. Myself, I am the game designer and writer for the game. Ildar Alimov is an art director. Mikhail Shvachko is a music composer and sound director. Andrei Khudozhitkov is working on programming, and Daria Solonets on animation. We started as a team of 2 people, and later we increased our team size to complete the game, to make it as big as it is now. It is, as I said, an ambitious project for us because of the scale of the game.
The art style is also really captivating. How did your team decide on that particular style for Black Book?
Well, from the get-go, we've decided to make a low-poly game because our team is rather small. We have to conserve our resources, and doing low-poly stuff saves quite a bit of time. This was the technological basis of the art style, but as for the picture itself, we wanted to make it a bit like a work of Bilibin, maybe some illustrations from the collection of Belichkas that we read about, so it has to be both dark, both mysterious and mythological, and along with that it had to be realistic in a way. It's basically a combination of low-poly 3D stuff with 2D sprites, and together we hope that they bring the required atmosphere to the game.
Can you tell us a little more about the Slavic folklore in Black Book and the game's protagonist, Vasilisa?
Well, as I've said, the game narrative is based on Belichki, short stories about true events of meetings with spirits and demons, and they may imitate the plot of the original Belichkas, or they may interpret them in a new way that we've made up. Vasilisa is a young sorceress. She has just received the knowledge of the dark arts. She's like a mythological creature herself in a way. She's a sorcerer, Koldun called the native tongue, and she knows a way to communicate with all other spirits and demons. She commands the demons, and this is how she gets her power, from the demons themselves.
What sort of gameplay can players expect in Black Book?
Well, at its core, Black Book is a deck-building RPG similar to Slay the Spire, so you build your own deck of cards, you then battle with these cards with the demons and spirits from the stories. And all of this is mixed with an adventure game, so you travel along the landscape of Cherdyn, and in each location there will be like a text quest or a short event or a battle, or sometimes an adventure-like event where you can move around, interact with your environment, get some items, and solve some puzzles. The game takes place around about 40 days in Vasilisa's life. Each day you receive a new quest, you have a new map to explore, and after that, when you complete this quest, you go to the next day. She has a goal to rescue her beloved one from the hells, as she believes.
Music in Black Book's trailer is really haunting. Who's behind the game's soundtrack?
The music in the game is being made by our composer, Mikhail Shvachko. He was a composer on our previous game, The Muzman. He draws inspiration from Russian folklore music, and also we have help of Perm State College of Arts and Culture. The Polish choir helped us make the choral music in the movement, and in this game we're hoping to bring several more choral songs to the game. Dark music of Mikhail Shvachko, I think, brings a nice really touch to the atmosphere of the game, and together with the choral music it's like a great combination to bring our vision to life in the game.
Is there a demo available for gamers interested in Black Book ahead of its release?
Yes, so for everyone who is interested in Black Book, who wants to check it out today, we have a demo, a prologue build on Steam. It is called Black Book Prologue. It has its own Steam page. Travel the first day of Vasilisa along her journey, and so please check it out. Hope you like the demo build.
When does Black Book release, and what platforms will it be available on?
So we're hoping to bring Black Book to the release in 2021. We want to release it on Steam, on PC and Mac platforms, and also it will be available on consoles like Switch, PlayStation and Xbox. So please check out the game, and thank you for the interview.
We can't wait to dive into the dark RPG world of Black Book when the game is released in 2021. To track the game's release, be sure to wishlist Black Book on Steam and follow the game on Twitter at PlayBlackBook. We love horror games and are always excited to find a new one to play that feels different and distinct. Set in a remote area of North Wales, Chasing Static follows Chris Selwood as he attempts to navigate through an unsettling area where a mysterious phenomenon has caused time to stand still. Turn on the lights because we're diving into the dark world of Chasing Static.
This is Dr. Williams of Sector 6. I'm here at 53.001975 minus 4.129730. Subject has moved considerable distance since the last manifestation, reading unprecedented noise in the upper limits of 30 megahertz, bearing 260 to 280. We lost sight of the echo. It's like it's toying with us. 3 days we've been chasing this thing across the moors. I'm fine. We're both fine. If anyone can hear us, we made it to the bunker. Sam, something happened. I told him not to go. Please, shut it down. Please.
Chasing Static is still in development. If you're eager to learn more about the game's story and setting, we recommend wishlisting Chasing Static on Steam and following the developer at Sick Chick Studio on Twitter. Mental health is a sensitive subject, and it can be hard to talk about. Having video games that explore subjects like anxiety and depression can encourage open discussion. We genuinely feel there should be more games that talk about these subjects and are so excited to find one like Into a Dream. In the game, you play as a psychiatrist working to help a man with depression by exploring his memories. To elaborate on the game, we interviewed creator and developer Philippe Thomas.
Hello everyone, my name is Philippe Thomas and I am the solo developer behind Into a Dream. First of all, I would like to thank Indie Obscura for this great opportunity. Into a Dream is a story-driven adventure game where the player finds out that his mind has been connected to the dreams of a man suffering from depression, and his goal there is to unveil his story, to talk to him, and to ultimately prevent him from fading away.
What first inspired you to create Into a Dream?
I always had a storytelling bug inside of me, and I've been always fascinated by people, how they process information, and why they feel or do what they do. So when I quit my job as a biotech engineer and I started messing around with Unity, I thought it was the perfect opportunity to combine this with something that I always wanted to do, which was a video game. My intent as a storyteller has always been to depict reality. And so from this intent of not only creating something entertaining, but that could have an impact on the player that could last longer than the game's playtime.
Into a Dream focuses on a character with severe depression. Have you ever experienced depression or know someone who has?
I have personally never been diagnosed with depression, although I've been mentally drained for a long period of time. I have, however, met many people who suffered from it, some of which are very close friends, and we've talked openly about it many times. Into a Dream's main focus is not to try and explain what it is to experience depression, what it feels like to be depressed, or even how to overcome it. Each individual has a very personal way of processing information, with different strengths, flaws, and fears. And it is easy for us to miscomprehend other people's actions and reactions to situations that don't affect us the same way. And that leads many of us to claim those people as lazy, unproductive, or weak. Into a Dream aims to show how a person was led to feel the way he felt, and the reason why he did what he did, which eventually dragged him to a dark state of mind. It is just one small story, one small drop in what is an immense topic, but it tries to connect the player to the characters by not only showing their actions, but also showing the why and what goes in their mind. Not for the player to necessarily accept their actions, but to understand them, because I believe that it is a necessary step, and a very difficult one, to break the still existing taboo on mental health.
What sort of gameplay can people expect from Into a Dream?
Into a Dream is a game where everything was designed to support the narrative. Although the gameplay relies a lot on dialogue and dialogue choices, there are several puzzles throughout the game that are directly related to the narrative. And these puzzles are extremely varied, ranging from picking up and using objects to controlling music. Although it's not necessary to do much non-linear exploration, those who do will be rewarded with information and objects that complement the main story.
Why did you choose a silhouette art style and monochromatic palette for Into a Dream?
The silhouette art style in Into a Dream was chosen for a variety of reasons, and first and foremost it was its simplicity. And the truth is, in most of our dreams, the setting and the objects are stripped down from its details. With some few exceptions, shape is what prevails. I would say that 95% of Into a Dream's objects are just monochromatic shapes. I decided to have the foreground completely devoid of color because it's supposed to symbolize the state of mind of the dreamer. The person who is dreaming is depressed, where the characters are is devoid of color, is in darkness. However, this darkness has not yet consumed this person in his entirety. There is still hope.
Did you also compose the music for Into a Dream? How did you work the soundtrack into the game's story?
I also composed most of the music that you can hear throughout Into a Dream. And the process of composition was actually quite simple. I decided to use just one instrument, and an instrument that I was quite familiarized with. I basically designed the levels first. I added all of the sound effects to the scene. And I would simply click on play, and while looking at the scenery and hearing the sound effects, I would just improvise a lot of different themes on top until I found something that I was satisfied with.
Little about it. I never expected anyone to actually read it.
Well, thank you. This is such a happy coincidence.
Who did the voice acting in the game, and why did you incorporate voice acting to the game rather than use written dialogue on its own?
The voice actors in Into a Dream are mostly friends and family that volunteer to help with the project. I was lucky enough that I have worked as a volunteer in an English-speaking theater, and this dialogue doesn't serve the purpose of only moving the story forward, but also to understand these characters better and their relationships. And there's a lot to learn from how people say something, in addition to what they are saying.
It's a little chilly here sometimes.
Well, what about you? What are you doing here, all alone, sitting on this wooden swing?
Oh, you know, I love sitting here. My daddy and I built it.
Why do you think it's important to have games like Into a Dream that tackle subjects like mental health?
As the game industry is growing and becoming acknowledged as a creative medium, I think games can balance entertainment and relaxation with thought-provocative questions and important issues that may linger in the player's mind afterwards, whether that is breaking taboos or ending injustices, or offering a different perspective on a matter that might help them learn and grow. Mental health is just one of those topics that affect a huge chunk of our population and is still a taboo, so I hope that Into a Dream may cast a light on it, or provoke a reaction or emotion on some of its players, and that it may contribute to the debate.
Is there a demo of the game people can play, and how can gamers support the development of Into a Dream?
Into a Dream has a free demo on Steam for Windows. If you are a Mac or Linux user, the demo is also available on itch.io. You can support Into a Dream by our crowdfunding Indiegogo campaign, that is now live until the 2nd of July. You can also support us by following us on all major social media outlets such as Facebook, Instagram or Twitter under the name Into a Dream Game.
Finally, when is Into a Dream expected to release and on what platforms?
Into a Dream is scheduled to be released in the very end of July on Steam and Voxpop games for Windows, Mac and Linux.
We're looking forward to playing this beautiful game when it's released later this year. To support the game, you can wishlist Into a Dream on Steam and follow @IntoADreamGame on Twitter. If you can't stay in one place for too long, we have a fast-paced roguelike skyline crawler that boosts a cool cyberpunk aesthetic, over 30 unique enemy types and weapons to choose from. Whether you want to loot items, explore city rooftops, or conquer soulless AI, Danger Scavenger has a little something for everyone.
Hi, I'm Piotr and I'm indie developer from Poland. I'm designing the game Danger Scavenger. I will now show you some cool, fresh gameplay from the latest version of Danger Scavenger. So, enjoy! So it's an action game with roguelike elements where you become one of the scavengers to save the world from evil AI. So I'm creating the game together with Stardrifter's team. We have joined forces about half a year ago after I exhibited my prototype on one of the game conventions. Danger Scavenger takes place in a cyberpunk world where megacorporations have accidentally created a powerful evil AI that wants to wipe out all of the humans. And scavengers are the outcasts that want to change the state that the world is in. So as one of scavengers, you will fight robots on tops of skyscrapers. Each one belongs to a different megacorporation and is filled not only with great dangers, but also with cool loot, like drones, items or weapons. Each of those have unexpected synergies between each other, so that each run can feel fresh and have some surprising outcomes. You can also use your items to craft other cool stuff in the workshop. So for example, you can add different powers or attributes to your weapons or items. So as you progress through each building, you will get to choose what enemies you will encounter on your way. And your choices also affect how the final boss of the building will behave. So you have to choose very wisely, because he can have up to 3 weapons that depend on the choices that you have made on your path. We took a unique twist on dungeon crawler genre of games. We have moved the action high up onto the skyscrapers. Action is really dynamic and you can destroy enemies on many different creative ways. Like for example, you can push enemies from the roof, or you can use the environment to destroy them. And all the cool actions that you perform will grant you score. You will need this score to unlock lots of different weapons and items that can from now on appear on your future runs. As you progress through the game, you will also unlock other scavengers. So there are currently 4 characters that you can play. Each one has different set of starting abilities, as well as starting items and weapons. The game is challenging, but it also offers a lot of fun different strategies. And I'm sure that you will find one that suits you the best and gives you the most fun.
If the action in Danger Scavengers has you eager to play it for yourself, we have good news! The game is available on Steam right now. If you want to stay informed on future game updates, be sure to follow @StarDrifters on Twitter. Floppy Knights is a game that's more on the family-friendly side of things. It incorporates retro 90s technology in a unique and creative way and blends it together with fun turn-based strategy and deck building. The end result is a game that's easy to get into and hard to stop playing once you get started. To help teach us the ins and outs of Floppy Knights, we spoke to Marlo Dobby, the game's creative lead and artist.
For those who may be unfamiliar with the game, what is Floppy Knights?
Floppy Knights is a tactics meets deck building game. You play as this character Phoebe, who has created an invention that can make battle units out of floppy disks, and all of which are very goofy and wild characters. She uses these units to do odd jobs, fight battles, and kind of everything in between.
What inspired you to create a game like Floppy Knights?
The original inspiration behind Floppy Knights was mine and my team's love for games like Advance Wars and Fire Emblem. We were exploring this idea of how both tactics games and deck building games give you this sort of resource management, doing math, good brain feeling, and we were really interested in how we could mash those genres together in a really meaningful way.
Right off the bat, we're captivated by the visual style of Floppy Knights. Who worked on the art and design of the game?
I'm the creative director on the project, so I'm responsible for overseeing and working on a bit of everything, with my big focus being on actually making the art, animation, and overall aesthetics of the game. I'm working entirely digitally on this project, drawing with pretty much whatever tablets I have available during my time working from home, but I both draw and animate in Photoshop.
The floppy in Floppy Knights refers to the use of floppy disks. Why did you choose floppy disks over other forms of storage?
Floppy disks are kind of this iconic thing, right? They're literally the save icon on our computers in like all of the software that we use. They're very of their time, but they're also incredibly recognizable as a symbol. So even younger folks who grew up after floppy disks were popular can really recognize what they are at a glance. For us, they were kind of the perfect thing to visually reference for a classic storage system.
Adding to that, can you talk a little more about the game's unique world that blends alchemy with classic tech?
Yeah, this was an idea that really stuck around since the beginning of us concepting this game, mixing a more traditional fantasy world with 80s and 90s technology. For the world of Floppy Knights, I really wanted to play with this idea that in this colorful fantasy world, there exists traditional magic, but technology is kind of right alongside it and also is seen as a type of magic, because technology just in real life is already pretty much magic. So I really like the idea of putting the two things next to each other.
The floppy disks are able to summon projections known as Floppy Knights. What are some of the different Floppy Knights you can summon?
There's a lot. I had a lot of fun and freedom with the designs, so they're all really, really different and really unique from each other. I think so far the fan favorite is the succulent kicker, who is literally just a potted plant that likes to kick things. Other favorites of mine are the raven rogue, who's a really sneaky raven that throws razor sharp feathers around, and Bubble Boy is another favorite of mine. He's got a cauldron for a head and throws potions around the battlefield. So there's a huge variety of them, and those are really only scratching the surface, so I kind of think everyone will be able to find a favorite like I have.
Can you tell us a little more about the game's main character, Phoebe?
Phoebe is a really talented inventor, but she's a little bit lazy. At the beginning of the game, she's expected to get a job and make enough money to move out of her parents' house. So she creates the Floppy Knights technology, and with the help of her robot arm and best friend Carlton, the idea is that they can take on odd jobs around her town, get the Floppy Knights to do all the heavy lifting for them, and make all the cash that they need. But as the story progresses, the jobs Phoebe takes on have kind of higher and higher stakes, and she ends up sort of inadvertently becoming a folk hero known for helping people. So her story is a lot about maturity and growth, and realizing that helping other people is really important, and finding your place in the world to do it is really important.
How are the two genres, deck building and turn-based combat, blended and presented in Floppy Knights?
So players will be taking on traditional sort of tactics battles, but with a bit of a twist. Each turn, you draw cards from your deck and have a set amount of energy to spend on playing those cards. And these cards are the things that allow you to place units on the map and move them and buff them and do special attacks with them and all that kind of stuff. So you have your standard move your units towards the enemy to attack, but with this little bit of randomness and strategy thrown in that you have to consider in every turn. You have to really think about what the most optimal turn is with the cards that you're dealt. There's a lot of familiar language in there from like tactics and deck building games, which makes it easy to pick up for folks who are familiar, but together those two languages mean something totally different and kind of unexpected that will give these players a really new kind of challenge.
Is there a learning curve to Floppy Knights, or is it approachable for gamers of all ages?
I think the really unique thing about these games is that you can learn alongside them while you play. So brand new players will be able to make it through the game, but as you master the mechanics more and more, you kind of learn how to play very optimally, and you can take on challenges in the game as they ramp up. For example, we will have bonus objectives in each level for players that prefer a little bit of an extra challenge beyond just beating the level. So I think it's open to all skill levels, but rewards you in really fun ways as you get better and more masterful at the game.
When is Floppy Knights expected to release, and on what platforms?
Floppy Knights will release whenever I can leave my house again. We don't have an announced date or anything yet, but you can keep up with us on Twitter for any updates and announcements in regards to Floppy Knights.
While there's no release date for Floppy Knights just yet, you can wishlist the game on Steam to ensure you're able to scoop up a copy the moment it comes out. We also encourage you to follow @Floppy Knights and Rose City Games on Twitter for game updates and other fun Floppy Knights related posts. And that concludes our IOX-2 Digital Direct. Thank you once again for joining us. We hope that you discovered some new indie games to play and share with your friends. If you were drawn to any of the indies you saw today but can't remember what the names were or where to follow the developers, you can head on over to our Twitter page at indie_obscura. There you'll find an IOX recap article that contains info on all 16 games featured in IOX-2. We'll also be retweeting and promoting these 16 games in our Twitter and uploading IOX-2 in full on YouTube, so you can watch and rewatch as often as you like. Thank you again to Shacknews and HyperX for hosting and sponsoring IOX-2. We couldn't have done this program without them. Thank you so much. An absolutely big thank you to the talented team at Greenlit Content. They did an awesome job. Thanks so much to them. We wish you all a safe and healthy and happy summer spent indoors with some fun indie games and online shows like this one. So stay tuned as we hope to put together another IOX broadcast in the near future. I'm Nars, and until next time guys, keep supporting indie games and indie developers.